want to say good afternoon. Welcome everybody to this, the Lord's last feast day of the year. Not the last day, but the last feast of the year. This is the first day of the last feast of the year. This Feast of Tabernacles, it lasts for 8 days. And you are to feast for 7 days, and then on the 8th day have a solemn assembly, and that is what we are going to do. But this evening, I want to welcome everybody to this feast. It is the last feast of the year. That is how it's stated in the Bible. And as all God's feasts, it has something to do with God's plan for the salvation of man. This particular feast is about the last harvest that will take place at the coming of the Lord. It is also called the Feast of Ingathering, because when the Lord comes, he is going to gather his people from all over the world. And that's what this feast is really about. I always like to start in Leviticus chapter 23, because first it tells you whose feasts these are. We want to begin at verse 1, Leviticus 23, and begin reading at verse 1. 23 and 1. Okay, go ahead, read, brother.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying.
Now it is the Lord that is speaking unto Moses, and he is saying unto Moses what Moses should say unto the people. Go ahead, continue.
Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, concerning the feast of the Lord, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feasts.
Now the Lord said it twice. He said, speak unto the children of Israel concerning the feast of the Lord, even these are his feasts. So this feast that we are here to observe this evening, it is one of the feasts of the Lord. It is the very last feast of the year. Go ahead, continue reading.
6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest.
Go ahead.
And holy convocation, ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings.
And that did not change, people. It is still the 7th day. That is the weekly Sabbath day. But we are dealing this evening with an annual Sabbath day. Because when people hear the word Sabbath, they always think that it is talking about the 7th day of the week. Well, the weekly Sabbath is the 7th day of the week. But the Lord also has annual Sabbaths. And that is what this day is. The first day of this Feast of Unleavened Bread, it is a high Sabbath. And the last day of this Feast of Unleavened Bread, it is a high Sabbath as well. But now he says, these are the feasts of the Lord. Go ahead. What verse are we? 4?
Verse 4.
Go ahead.
These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations,
Go ahead.
which ye shall proclaim in their seasons.
Now the Lord said, holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their season. Season mean at a certain time. So there's a certain time that these feasts are to be done. And the Lord, as far as the weekly Sabbath go, it is the 7th day of the week, always. But then these high Sabbath days, they fall on a date of the month. Skip down to verse 33, and we will deal with the one that is in season. Go ahead, read, brother.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying.
Go ahead.
Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, the 15th day of this 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacle for 7 days unto the Lord.
Now he's saying the 15th day of this 7th month. The 15th day of the 7th month according to God's lunar calendar, because that is what we are dealing with. It began at sundown yesterday. Because when you start talking about calendars, you have a solar calendar which is always 12 months. Then you have the lunar calendar, which is determined by new moons. Every time there's a new moon, that means there's a new month. Now, in this solar year, we had 13 new moons, therefore we had 13 months. Go ahead, what verse are we?
Verse 35.
Read it.
On the first day shall be an holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein.
Well, this is the first day. The Lord said, you shall have a holy convocation, and you shall do no servile work therein. And this is the first day of the Feast of the Tabernacles. Go ahead and read.
7 days ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. On the 8th day shall be an holy convocation unto you.
Go ahead.
And ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord.
Now he says 7 days ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. That you don't have to do anymore. Then he said on the 8th day you shall also offer an offering, and you shall have a solemn assembly. It is not a time of feasting. It is a time to have a solemn assembly. And that is what we are going to do on the 8th day. But we are not dealing with the 8th day now. We are dealing with the first 7 days. Skip down to verse 39. Go ahead and read.
Also in the 15th day of the 7th month.
Also in the 15th day of the 7th month, according to God's lunar calendar. Go ahead and read on.
When ye have gathered in the fruit of the land, ye shall keep a feast unto the Lord 7 days.
Now he said, when you have gathered the fruit of the land, each one of these feast days fell around a harvest. I'm going to read you something here from the Bible dictionary. And the Lord had this thing set up so that you would not get lost, because there was 3 harvests, and each one of these 3 main feasts, they fell at the time of a harvest. Let's start reading here. We're going to read from the New Compact Bible Dictionary, page 239. Go ahead and read that, brother. Go ahead.
Harvest. Because the economy of the Israelites was strictly agricultural.
Because their economy was agricultural. Go ahead and read.
Harvest time was a very significant event.
Harvest time was a very significant time, it says. Go ahead.
They had 3 each year.
And they had 3 each year, and guess what? One fell around each one of these 3 feasts that the Lord said that all the males had to come before him, and they could not come before him empty. So they always fell around a harvest time, because you had to come up with something. Well, what better time to hold it than when it was harvest time, because everybody had something then. So you had to come up before the Lord, and you had to come up, and you could not come up empty. Go ahead and read.
The barley reaping, Ruth 1 and 22, came in April through May.
Go ahead.
The wheat harvest, Genesis 30 and 14, was about 6 weeks later.
Go ahead.
In June through July. And the ingathering of the fruits of tree or vine took place in the months of September and October.
So you see around what time these harvests took place. It said that one took place around April and May, and that was the first one, which was the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and then the other one took place around June or July, what was the Feast of Pentecost, and then the last one took place around September or October, which was the Feast of the Tabernacles, what we are dealing with this evening. Let's go back. I want to read that 39th verse again, because it had this one. As we are going to find out, it was dealing with the harvest. Go ahead and read. Read that verse 39. Read it.
Also in the 15th day of the 7th month.
Also in the 15th day of the 7th month. Go ahead and read.
When ye have gathered in the fruit of the land.
Now when you had gathered the fruit of the land. So now you could not do this feast until you had gathered the fruit of the land. In other words, till harvest time. Right. Lord kind of set this in place so that you would not get lost, so that you would not begin this feast too early. because it had to be around the time of the harvest. The Lord said when you had gathered the fruit of the land. Couldn't do it too early. You had to wait until the harvest, which is the last harvest, which is the Tabernacles. You had to wait until that harvest began before you could do this feast of the Tabernacles. Lord said it that way so that you would not get lost. Because if you started too early, if you started this feast too early, then it would not be the time of the harvest.
Right.
Because you had to wait till the harvest was fully ripe before you start to gather, and then that had to be on the 15th day of the first month, of the 7th month, rather. Go ahead and read.
You shall keep a feast unto the Lord 7 days.
And then the Lord said, keep a feast unto him 7 days. Go ahead and read.
On the first day shall be a Sabbath, and on the 8th day shall be a Sabbath.
Now the Lord said the first day shall be a Sabbath, and the 8th day shall be a Sabbath. It is a high Sabbath day. So now, first day had to be a Sabbath, 8th day had to be a Sabbath. This is a Sabbath day, but the Lord said, you can work, but just don't do any servile work. Let's go and look at some here. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 23, and we'll begin reading at verse 9. Go ahead and read. Now this tabernacle, this is the last harvest of the year. The first harvest of the year would begin at the first feast of the year, which is the feast of unleavened bread. Start reading at Leviticus 23 and began reading at verse 9. Go ahead and read, brother.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying.
Now again the Lord spake unto Moses, saying. Go ahead and read.
Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when ye be come into the land which I give unto you,
go ahead,
and shall reap the harvest thereof, then ye shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priest.
Now the Lord said, when you come into the land, ye shall reap the feast of the harvest unto you. What harvest is this talking about? This is talking about the feast of unleavened bread, which is the first month of the year. So you can't start your months until around 14 days before the time of the first harvest. Go ahead and read on, which is the feast of unleavened bread. Go ahead, keep reading.
And he shall wave the sheaf before the Lord to be accepted for you.
Go ahead.
On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it.
Go ahead and read.
And ye shall offer that day when ye have waved the sheep and he lamb without blemish of the first year for a burnt offering unto the Lord.
Go ahead.
And the meat offering thereof shall be 2/10 deal of fine flour mingled with oil, an offering made by fire unto the Lord.
So now, you know, when you come into the land and then you have this feast, this harvest as it says here, which is the feast of the unleavened bread. That is what harvest is. This is the first one of the year. Lord did this so you would know around what time to start the first month of the year. Because if you mess up the first month, then you're going to mess up all the rest of them. So Lord had these things set so you would know around what time to start your year. Because it started with the first new moon of the year. And that would be around the feast of the unleavened bread, which is a time of the first harvest of the year. You can't do it too early, because you can't have no harvest until the crops are ripe.
Right.
So if you start too early, then your crops are not ripe. But this feast, this first feast of the year, it started around the time of unleavened bread. When you come into the land, you shall reap the feast of your harvest, the Lord says. Go ahead and read on.
Middle of 13.
Go ahead.
An offering made by fire unto the Lord for a sweet savor. And the drink offering thereof shall be of wine, the fourth part of an hin.
Go ahead and read.
And ye shall eat neither bread nor parched corn nor green ears until the selfsame day that ye have brought an offering unto your God.
Go ahead and read.
It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations.
Now the Lord said this is a statute throughout your generation. You had to do this offering. You had to, when you reap the harvest, which is the first harvest of the year, which is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. That is the first harvest of the year. That is the first feast of the year. Go ahead, keep reading.
In the 14.
Go ahead.
In all your dwellings. And ye shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that ye brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete.
And then that would take you to the next harvest, the next feast, which is the Feast of Pentecost. And then you have a harvest around Pentecost as well. Lord had this thing set up as such, so you don't mess it up. Because you have to get it right, people. Because everything had to be done, as the Lord said, in its season. Couldn't be done no anytime. Had to be done in its season. What verse I was?
16.
Go ahead and read.
Even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath shall ye number 50 days. And ye shall offer a new meat offering unto the Lord.
So now the first month of the year started around the first harvest of the year, which fell around unleavened bread. That was the first month of the year. Can't start too early. You especially got to get this first one right, because if you don't get it right, then you're going to mess up all the rest of them. So you had to get it right. Had to get them all right, because all of them had to be done in their season anyway. Now, let's go to Deuteronomy. Chapter 16. And we're going to read just one verse. We're going to come back later because the Lord is going to even tell you again when you had the first feast, which was at the time of the first harvest. Start reading at Deuteronomy 16 and read just one verse, verse 13. Go ahead and read.
Thou shalt observe the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days.
Now the Lord said, observe the Feast of the Tabernacles. Look what he says, 7 days. Go ahead and read.
After that thou hast gathered in thy corn and thy wine.
After you have gathered in your corn and your wine. So you didn't do it until after you had had a harvest. After you had gathered in the corn and the wine. That is when the feast would begin. After the harvest. That's why the Lord had these feasts set up around the harvest. Let's go. Did you finish that verse?
Yes, sir.
Let's go and look at it again. Let's go this time to not Leviticus, but Exodus chapter 23. And we began reading at verse 14, because not only is this feast called the Feast of the Tabernacles, but it is also called the Feast of Ingathering, because it had to do with, first of all, from the natural sense, it was dealing with the gathering of the harvest. But from the spiritual sense, it was dealing with when the Lord returned and gathered his people, which is also referred to as a harvest. Let's start reading here at Exodus 23 and began reading at verse 14. Exodus 23 and began at verse 14. Go ahead and read.
3 times thou shalt keep a feast unto me in the year.
Now the Lord said 3 times a year keep a feast unto him, and he's going to tell you what they are. 3 times a year. Not 1, not 2, not 4, but 3 times a year the Lord said ye shall keep a feast unto him. Go ahead and read.
Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread.
Now he said you shall keep the feast of unleavened bread. Go ahead and read.
Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded thee, in the time appointed of the month Abib. For in it thou camest out from Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty.
And then the Lord said none should appear before him empty. Well, if they all fell around the time of a harvest, whenever you came up, then you should have had something.
That's right.
That's what the Lord said. When you come up to these feasts, you ought to give according to how the Lord have blessed you.
Yes,
if you had a good harvest, then you were supposed to give more. And if you didn't have such a good harvest, then you gave less. But all of them fell around the time of a harvest. So that meant that you shouldn't have to come before the Lord empty. Go ahead, keep reading.
Verse 16.
Read it.
And the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labors, which thou hast sown in the field, and the feast of ingathering.
See what it said, the feast of harvest, the first fruits of what you had sown in the field. And then he said a feast of ingathering, which is the feast of the tabernacle. Because it's dealing with gathering in, and it's dealing with the last harvest as well. Go ahead, keep reading.
Which is in the end of the year.
See what time the Lord said it is? It is at the end of the year. The year began with a harvest. That was the feast of the unleavened bread. And then it ended with a harvest, which is the Feast of Tabernacles, or as it is called here, the Feast of Ingathering. Go ahead, finish that verse.
When thou hast gathered in thy labors out of the field.
When you have gathered in your labor out of the field. So it's got to fall around the time of the harvest, people, so you don't get messed up. Right. You cannot start it too early. It had to be around the time of the harvest. Lord said, when you have gathered in your labor out of the field, because you had to come up and bring something. Let's go now to Matthew chapter 13, and we'll begin reading at verse 24. Because now we are going to look at when the Lord returns, there will be a spiritual harvest. There will be a gathering of the righteous. We're going to start at Matthew 13 and begin reading at verse 24. Matthew 13, began verse 24. Go ahead and read, brother.
Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field.
Well, wait a minute. Look at how he's dealing with this parable. A man that sowed good seed into his field. You're dealing with sowing something, planting something. Yes, sir. Good seed, the Lord said, into his field. This parable here is really about the coming of the Lord, when there will be a harvest. Go ahead, read.
But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also.
Go ahead.
So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed in thy field? From whence then has it tares?
Go ahead.
He said unto them, An enemy hath done this. The servant said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up?
Go ahead.
But he said, Nay, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them.
Now he talk about go and gather them up. And then he said, no, don't do that, because if you gather up the wheat now, then you will also gather up the tares. But wait until the time of the harvest. Go ahead, read on.
Let both grow together unto the harvest.
Go ahead.
And in the time of harvest, I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn.
So now he talks about gathering the tares and burning them, and then he talks about gathering the wheat into his barn. Now they're going to ask him, what meaneth this parable? And he's going to tell them, skip down to verse 36. Go ahead and read.
Then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples came unto him, saying, Declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field. So
now then his disciples, they asked him, explain to us the parable of the tares in the field. And he's going to tell them here. Go ahead.
He answered and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man.
Go ahead.
The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom,
Now he said, the good seed, they are the children of the kingdom. Go ahead and read on.
But the tares are the children of the wicked one.
But the tares, they are the children of the wicked one. In other words, they are the children of the devil. Now going to come the time of the harvest, and this is what the Lord said that you will do. Go ahead and read on.
Verse 39.
Go ahead.
The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world.
And then he said, now this harvest, it will take place at the end of the world. In other words, when the Lord returns. That is when the harvest is going to take place. Go ahead, keep reading.
And the reapers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of this world.
Now he says, so will it be in the end of the world. Go ahead.
The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity.
Well, that is the tares. But then what is he going to do with the wheat? Because you had the tares, then you had the wheat as well. And we're dealing with the end of the world when the Lord is going to come. That is what time this harvest is going to take place. And that is what this Feast of the Tabernacles is really pointing to. It is really pointing to the last harvest. Yes, because it said the Feast of the Tabernacle at the end of the year. Go ahead, keep reading.
Verse 42.
Read it.
And shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth.
Well, that is the tares that he's going to cast into the furnace of the fire. Go ahead and read.
Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father.
And then shall, when the Lord returns, he is going to gather the righteous and put them in his kingdom. That is what this feast is keeping you in mind of. When he returns, because it said it is the last feast of the year, at the end of the year. Well, this is at the end of man's time, when the Lord is going to return and gather the people, the righteous, and put them in his kingdom. Go ahead, keep reading.
Whoever is to hear, let him hear.
Now, whoever have an ear, the Lord said, let them hear. Let's go and look at it again. Let's go to Matthew chapter 24. We're going to go and look at the coming of the Lord again. This time, it's going to talk about gathering. Well, that's what a harvest is. It means to gather. That's what a harvest is, people. So now, this time, it's going to talk about when the Lord comes at the end of this age, that he is going to gather his people from one end of the earth even unto the other. That is why it is called the Feast of the End Gathering. Let's go to Matthew 24, and we'll begin reading at verse 3. I want you to read that third verse, because they came to him and they asked him, what would be the sign of his coming and of the end of the world? And he went on to tell them, but also he's going to let you know what he's going to do when he returns. Matthew 24, and read verse 3. Go ahead, brother.
And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be?
Go ahead.
And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world?
Now they asked him, what would be the sign of his coming and of the end of the world? And he went on and started to name them signs. And we're going to just skip, because we don't need to read all of this, because he talked about wars, rumors of wars, and false prophets, and all of that. But then, skip down to verse 21. Go ahead and read.
For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be.
Then the Lord said there would be great tribulation. Has not been since the beginning of the world, neither will there ever be again. Skip down to verse 27 now. Go ahead and read.
For as the lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west,
go ahead.
So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be.
Now he says, lightning shine out of the east and even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. That is what we are reading about, the coming of the Son of Man, when he will return to this earth, and that is when we will have this harvest here, even what this particular feast is dealing with. Because we read in Matthew chapter 13 that there would be a harvest. You know, he's going to gather the wheat unto his barn, meaning they going into the kingdom. And he going to gather the tares and put them in the fire. Go ahead, keep reading.
For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together.
Go ahead and read.
Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall
now
the
he said you would have this tribulation. Then he said immediately after this tribulation, this is what would happen. Go ahead and read.
Shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light.
Then the sun going to get dark, and the moon ain't going to give her light. You're going to know when the Lord comes.
That's right.
He got signs all over this book. Let you know when he is coming. Ain't going to be no mystery. Everybody scratching their head trying to figure out, well, when is the Lord coming? You're going to know when he comes.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and read.
And the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken.
Go ahead.
And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn.
Go ahead.
And they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory.
Now, before the Lord come, all these things got to happen. You got to have this great tribulation, and then the sun ain't going to give her light, moon not going to give her light. Stars gonna fall from heaven, all of that. Everybody gonna know when he coming. Sure. You know, years ago, there was some that used to teach about the Lord making a secret coming. Ain't gonna be nothing secret about the Lord's coming, people. Anytime the Lord gonna shake up the heaven, he gonna shake up the earth. Stars ain't gonna give their light. Moon won't give her light. Stars gonna fall from heaven. You know the Lord is coming here, and when he comes, this is what he'll do. Go ahead and read on.
Verse 31.
Read.
And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet.
Go ahead.
And they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other.
See what the Lord going to do? He going to gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of this earth, even unto the other end of it. But this is at the Lord's coming, people. This is when he going to gather the people. As we read in the last days, at the end of the world, as we read in Matthew 13. And now again, you're reading it here in Matthew 24. He going to gather his elect. This feast is called, people, the Feast of the End Gathering, which means a time that the Lord is going to gather his people. Let's go now, Luke chapter 21. And we'll begin reading at verse 20. Because we're going to deal a little bit with the gathering of Israel, but we're going to deal as well with the gathering of all of God's people. Because it's not just about Israel. I know what the book said, Moses, go speak unto the children of Israel and tell them these are my feasts, and you must keep them in their season and all of that. But I tell you right now, whatever Israel have to do, then everybody else that's going to serve the true and living God, they have to do it as well. Because this gathering is not just about the gathering of Israel, but it is about the gathering of the people of God. Start reading at Luke chapter 21, and we'll begin reading at verse 20. I want you to read that 20th verse, then I want you to skip down to verse 23. Okay, go ahead and read, brother.
And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh.
Now, after Jesus said this, in 70 AD, Jerusalem was surpassed or surrounded with armies, and then the Romans came down there and they destroyed it. Because Jesus even said, when you see that, then know that the desolation thereof is near. That was some 2,000 years ago. Now he's going to tell you what would happen to the Israelites that was there in the land at that time. Skip down to verse 23. Go ahead and read.
But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days.
Go ahead.
For there shall be a great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people.
Go ahead and read.
And they shall fall by the edge of the sword.
Now he's saying that the Israelites that was in the land at that time, they would fall by the edge of the sword. Go ahead and read.
And shall be led away captive into all nations.
And they would be led away captive into all nations. When did this happen? In 70 AD.
Yes,
in 70 AD, that's the last time that the real Israelites was in their land. And at that time they were led away captive, the Lord saying to all nations, and he going to even let you know for how long they would be led away captive. Go ahead and read on.
And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled.
And then Jerusalem, he said, would be trodden down of other people until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So Israel would not be in the land after 70 AD until the Lord returned. That is when they are going back to the land. When he returned, he is going to gather them back. Let's go to Ezekiel chapter 34, and we'll begin reading at verse 5, Ezekiel 34, and we will pick it up at verse 5, 34 and 5. Now, you know, the Lord's going to tell you in a little bit how he is the one that's going to gather Israel. In fact, he's going to tell you right here in this 34th chapter of Ezekiel, if you understand who this is that you're reading about. This is Jesus that you're reading about. Yes, and you're reading about the time when he's going to gather his people. And at what time will that be? That will be at his coming, when you will have this last harvest here. Start reading at Ezekiel 34 and began reading at verse 5. 34 and pick it up at verse 5. Go ahead and read.
And they were scattered because there is no shepherd, and they became meat to all the beasts of the field when they were scattered.
So now he said they were scattered, meaning the Israelites. They were scattered. And they became meat for all the beasts of the field when they were scattered. Go ahead and read on.
My sheep wandered through all the mountains and upon every high hill. Yea, my flock was scattered upon all the face of the earth, and none did search.
Jesus said they would be led away captive into all nations, didn't he? So the Lord said his sheep was scattered upon all of the face of the earth. Same time, this is what you're reading about. But you're dealing with now when the Lord is going to gather them. But he just let you know the same thing that you read over in Luke chapter 21. His sheep was scattered upon all of the face of the earth. Go ahead, keep reading.
And none did search or seek after them.
Now he saying none search or seek after them, but he said, I'm going to do it. Go ahead and read on.
Therefore ye shepherds, hear the word of the Lord.
Go ahead and read.
As I live, saith the Lord God, surely because my flock became a prey, and my flock became meat to every beast of the field, because there was no shepherd, neither did my shepherds search for my flock, but the shepherds fed themselves and fed not my flock.
Now he said, my sheep became meat to every beast of the field, because they didn't have no shepherd. But now the real shepherd, he is going to come and he is going to gather his flock. He's going to tell you that. And you know who the real shepherd is? The real shepherd, that is Jesus. He told you that in John chapter 10. But go ahead, verse 11. Go read.
For thus saith the Lord God, behold, I, even I, will both search my sheep and seek them out.
Well, he didn't have no other shepherd to seek them out or to search for them. So the Lord said, I will go and I will search out my sheep, and I am going to gather my sheep. Go ahead, keep reading.
As a shepherd seeketh out his flock in the day that he is among his sheep that are scattered, so will I seek out my sheep.
Go ahead.
And will deliver them out of all places where they have been scattered in the cloudy and dark day.
Go ahead and read.
And I will bring them out from the people and gather them from the country, and will bring them to their own land, and feed them upon the mountains of Israel by the rivers, and in all their inhabited places of the countries.
So now the Lord said, I am going to gather them. And he said, I will even do it in a dark day. And I'm going to show you what this dark day is, that he is going to do it. Go ahead, read that next verse.
And I will feed them in a good pasture.
And the Lord said, when I gather them, I'm going to feed them in a good pasture. Read.
And upon the high mountains of Israel shall their fold be. There shall they lie in a good fold, and in a fat pasture shall they feed upon the mountains of Israel.
He said, in a good fold and in a fat pasture shall they feed upon the mountains of Israel. But he told you that it will be in a dark day. Yes, let's go to, skip down to verse 20, verse 20. Well, verse 19. Go ahead and read.
And as for my flock, they eat that which ye have trodden with your feet, and they drink that which ye have fouled with your feet.
Well, he's talking about what the false shepherds now. Because he said ain't none of them sought after the flock. But he said now, but as for my flock, they eat that you've trodden with your feet. This is stuff that the false shepherds been feeding them. Lord, compared it to something you would just trod with your feet. So it ain't the word of God. So it's like something you just trod it with your feet. Go ahead, keep reading.
Therefore thus saith the Lord God unto them, Behold, even I will judge between the fat cattle and between the lean cattle.
Go ahead, read.
Because ye have thrust with the side and with the shoulder, and pushed all the disease with your horns, till ye have scattered them abroad. Therefore will I save my flock, and they shall no more be a prey, and I will judge between cattle and cattle.
Now, Lord said, I'm going to save my flock, and they will be no more a prey, and I will judge between cattle and cattle. Go ahead and read.
And I will set up one shepherd over them, and he shall feed them.
Go ahead.
Even my servant David, he shall feed them, and he shall be their shepherd.
Now, let's go and look at this dark day that the Lord is talking about here, when he's going to gather his flock, and when he's going to feed them there in the mountains up on the land of Israel. Let's go to Matthew chapter 25, and we began reading that. Let me see, where do we want to start here? Let me get it. Matthew chapter 25. I know we want to start there, but let's see, where there do we want to start? Let's start at verse 31. Okay, brother, go ahead and read.
When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory.
Well, look at what time we're reading about. When the Son of Man come in his glory, and all of the holy angels with him, then he going to sit up on the throne of his glory. What throne is this? This is the throne of David.
Yes,
then the Lord going to sit up on the throne of David, as it was written in Psalms and a couple of places in the book of Psalms. Go ahead and read on.
And before him shall be gathered all nations. He shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats.
And before him will be gathered all nations, and he going to separate them as a shepherd divideth the sheep from the goats. Remember, we read about that over in the 34th chapter of Ezekiel, about the sheep and the goats being separated. Now you know what time. But the Lord talked about in a dark and cloudy day that he will do this. Go ahead and read on.
Verse 34.
Read it.
Then shall the king say to them, 33.
Go ahead.
And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left.
Well, that's what he talked about over in the 34th chapter of Ezekiel. He's going to set the sheep on one hand and the goats on the left hand. Go ahead, keep reading.
Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world.
Inherit the kingdom that was prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Well, that's the same thing that we read about earlier. When was this? When the Son of Man come and all the holy angels with him. That's what time that we are dealing about. He going to gather all nations, and he going to set the sheep on the right hand and the goats on the left hand. Go ahead and read.
For I was an hungered, and ye gave me meat.
Go ahead.
I was thirsty, and ye gave me drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me in.
Go ahead.
Naked, and ye clothed me. I was sick, and ye visited me.
Go ahead.
I was in prison, and ye came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered and fed thee, or thirsty and gave thee drink? When saw we thee a stranger and took thee in, or naked and clothed thee?
Now the righteous ask him, when did you see when did we see all this? You was hungry and we fed you, naked and we clothed. When did we see all this? And he gonna tell them. Go ahead and read.
Or when saw we thee sick or in prison and came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them,
Go ahead.
Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me.
Now the Lord said, cause ain't nothing you can give the Lord. When you gonna give it? He got everything. He told you if he was hungry, he wouldn't even ask you for nothing. I own a cattle up on 1,000 hills. So what you going to give it? But when you do it unto your brother, then it's like you're doing it unto him. Yes, but what time are we reading about here when the Son of Man come in all of his glory and the holy angels with him? Go ahead, keep reading, brother.
Verse 41. Then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels.
Read.
For I was an hungered, and ye gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and ye gave me no drink.
Go ahead.
I was a stranger, and ye took me not in. Naked, and ye clothed me not. Sick, and in prison, and ye visited me not. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered, or athirst, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? Then shall he answer them, saying, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye did it not to one of the least of these, ye did it not to me.
Go ahead.
And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal.
But the righteous into life eternal.
Yes,
what time is this going to happen? When the Lord return and gather his people from all corners of the earth. That is what time is going to happen. That is what this feast is about. It is about the harvest, as we read over in Luke. It is about the gathering of the people of God. That is what it is about. Jesus now said it again, and this time he said it even in plain language. Let's go to Luke chapter 13, and we'll begin reading at verse 34. Luke 13, and begin reading at verse 34. The last harvest, people, the gathering of the people of God. That is what it is about. That is what this feast of the end gathering, or feast of the tabernacles, represent. Start reading at Luke 13 and begin at verse 34. Go ahead and read.
O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, which killest the prophets and stonest them that are sent unto thee.
Go ahead and read.
How often would I have gathered thy children together as a hen doth gather her brood under her wings, and ye would not.
Look at what Jesus said, how often he would have gathered them. That's one thing that almost nobody associate the gathering of Israel with Jesus. See, we are Israelites, we are Jews, so we don't acknowledge Jesus. Well, guess what? Jesus was the one that scattered Israel, and he will be the one that will gather them. And he's telling you that right here. How often I would have gathered them, but they would not be gathered. And he's going to tell you when he will gather them. Go ahead and read on.
Behold, your house is left unto you desolate.
Now he said your house is left unto you desolate. What is this house that's left unto them desolate? It is their land. Go ahead and read on.
And verily I say unto you, ye shall not see me until the time come when ye shall say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord.
Now that is when he is going to gather them. At the time when they say, Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. That is at his second coming, people. Now, let's go to Isaiah 11. The Lord talking about gathering Israel. And you know, as we've been reading, it almost seems as if he's only going to gather Israel, but that is not the case, people. He will gather all of the people of God.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't care if you're Jew or Gentile, you got to keep these holidays,
That's
people.
right.
Because it is a reminder of what the Lord is going to do. Start reading at Isaiah 11 and begin reading at verse 1. 11 and 1. Okay, go ahead and read, brother.
And there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots.
Well, you know who this rod that's coming out of Jesse is, and this branch that's coming out of his roots? This is Jesus, people. Jesse, that was David's father. And you know, some places in the scripture, Jesus is referred to as the son of David. So therefore, if he's the son of David, that means that he is the son of Jesse as well. Go ahead, keep reading.
And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him. The Spirit of wisdom and understanding.
Go ahead.
The Spirit of counsel and might. The Spirit of knowledge and of fear of the Lord.
Now he said the Spirit of the Lord will rest upon him. The Spirit of knowledge and wisdom and counsel. Go ahead and read on.
And shall make him of quick understanding in the fear of the Lord.
Go ahead.
And he shall not judge after the sight of his eyes, neither reprove after the hearing of his ears.
Now when the Lord returns, he going to judge, and he will make war as well.
Yes,
but look at what it says. He ain't going to judge after the sight of his eyes, nor the hearing of his ears. Because when the Lord judges, he can look right in your head, tell you what's going on in there. So he don't have to judge after the sight of his eyes or after the hearing of his ears. You know, somebody got to go and tell him, well, you know, Lord, such and such thing. See that boy over there, he was doing such. He going to judge after the sight of his eyes and after the hearing of his ears. Go ahead and read on.
But with righteousness shall he judge the poor and reprove with equity for the meek of the earth.
With righteousness he going to judge the poor and reprove with equity. Notice what it said, for the meek of the, you know, people got a problem with meek. You know, Jesus said it over in Matthew. The meek, the Lord said, will inherit the earth. Nobody want to be meek. Everybody want to be big and bad and tough.
Yes, sir.
But the Lord said, the meek will inherit this earth. And he meant just that. Read.
And he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked.
Now he's going to smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips, he is going to slay the wicked. Now, if you don't think this is Jesus, just go over to Revelations chapter 19. It'll let you know this is Jesus that's going to smite the earth with the breath of his lips. Read on.
Verse 5.
Read.
And righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and faithfulness the girdle of his reins.
Go ahead and read.
The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid.
Now at this time when the Lord returns, the wolf going to dwell with the lamb, and the leopard going to lie down with the kid. You say you're reading out of the Old Testament. Yeah, but it should be clear to everybody that this have not been fulfilled yet.
That's right.
You don't see wolves and lambs dwelling together. Lions and goats dwell not today. But when the Lord returns and gathers his people, then this is how it will be. Read on.
And the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them.
Go ahead and read.
And the cow and the bear shall feed. Their young ones shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox.
Lions don't eat straw. Lions are carnivores today. But in this day, it said a lion will eat straw like an ox. Go ahead and read.
Verse 8.
Read.
And the sucking child shall play on the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand on the cockatrice's den.
Go ahead and read.
They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea.
Now he said, and they will not hurt or destroy, Lord said this time, in all his holy mountain. For the earth will be as full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. The waters cover all of the sea.
Sir.
Everybody gonna know the Lord. You know the book talk about you ain't gonna have to go and talk to your neighbor and say, do you know the Lord? He said, for they all will know me, from the least even unto the greatest. That truly ain't today. Go ahead and read.
Verse 10.
Read it.
And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people.
Go ahead.
To it shall the Gentiles seek, and its rest shall be glorious.
In that day there shall be a root of, well, who is this root of Jesse now? This root of Jesse, that's Jesus too. Because as it is said in Revelation chapter 22, Jesus is both the root and the offspring of David, meaning David came out of him, and he came out of David. If you don't understand that, you need to hang around for a while, and we'll explain it to you one day. But now he will be, in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for insight to the people, and unto him will the Gentiles seek, and his rest will be glorious. You know what this rest is? It is that 1,000 years of peace that the Lord is going to establish on this earth when he come and gather his people. Go ahead, keep reading.
And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people.
And it's going to come to pass in that day that the Lord will set his hand a second time to recover the remnant of his people. Well, when was the first time? When he brought them out of Egypt.
Yes, sir.
When will be the second time? When he gathered them out of all nations wherein they have been scattered. Go ahead, keep reading.
Which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea.
Go ahead and read.
He shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel.
Now he's going to set up an ensign to the nations, and he will assemble the outcasts of Israel. Go ahead.
And gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth.
And then he will gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Judah got scattered. That is part of the nation of Israel. 10 tribes got scattered. That is the rest of the nation of Israel. And when the Lord returns, he's going to gather them all, and he's going to make them one nation in his hand.
Yes, sir.
They haven't been that since they broke up after the death of Solomon. But the Lord keeps talking about gathering the people. And now he's talking about unto him will the Gentiles even seek. Because he's going to gather them as well. Let's go over to Isaiah 56. And we'll begin reading at verse 1. Because he said here that he will gather together the outcast of Israel. What was the outcast of Israel? It was Israel when they got kicked out of their land. Where you are now, you ain't in your land no more. You got a land. Lord going to gather you back to it. But not only is he going to gather Israel, but he will gather all of the people of God. Let's start reading here at Isaiah 56, and we'll begin reading at verse 1. Isaiah 56. And began at verse 1. Okay, brother, go ahead and read.
Thus saith the Lord, keep ye judgment and do justice.
Go ahead.
For my salvation is near to come, and my righteousness to be revealed.
Now the Lord talk about his salvation being near to come, and his righteousness to be revealed. Go ahead.
Blessed is the man that doeth this, and the son of man that layeth hold on it.
Now he didn't say blessed is the Israelite, but blessed is the man that doeth this, and the Son of Man that layeth hold on it. Because this is about everybody, people. It is really about those that will walk in righteousness.
Yes, sir.
That's what this gathering is really all about. If Israel don't walk in righteousness, they ain't going to be gathered.
That's right.
And if the stranger walks in righteousness, he too will be gathered, and the Lord going to tell you that. Read.
That keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it.
Wait a minute, you mean the stranger have to keep the Sabbath day from polluting it?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Thus said the Lord, not thus said Isaiah. Thus said the Lord, the stranger that will keep the Sabbath day from polluting it. Yeah, whatever the Lord said to Israel, it was for everybody. Go ahead and read.
And keepeth his hand from doing any evil.
So now he said a stranger got to keep the Sabbath from polluting it. And then he have to keep his hand from doing any evil. Go ahead and read.
Neither let the son of the stranger that have joined himself to the Lord speak, saying, the Lord have utterly separated me from his people. Neither let the eunuch say, behold, I am a dry tree.
Now he said, don't let the son of the stranger that have joined himself unto the Lord, not to Israel, but to the Lord,
That's right.
speak, saying that the Lord have separated me from his people. Neither let the eunuch say, behold, I am a dry tree. Skip down to verse 6. Go ahead and read.
Also the son of the stranger that joined themselves to the Lord to serve him.
Now the son of the stranger that joined himself to the Lord, they say, I got some Israelite brothers need to read this.
Yes,
they say they believe in the Old Testament, but they say God is only going to deal with Israelite. Well, what is this saying? It's saying the son of the stranger that will join himself to the Lord, to serve the Lord, and to be his servant. Go ahead and read.
And to love the name of the Lord.
And to love the name of the Lord. Go ahead and read.
To be his servant. Everyone that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it.
To be his servant, everyone that will keep the Sabbath day from polluting it. Read.
And taketh hold of my covenant.
And the Lord said, taketh hold of his covenant. You know what the covenant is? That the stranger have to take hold of? Same one that he gave to Israel. Meaning the 10 Commandments.
Yes,
so the stranger got to do the same thing. And if he does that, then not only will the Lord gather Israel, the outcast of Israel, but he will gather the stranger as well. Go ahead, keep reading.
Verse 7. Even them will I bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer.
See what the Lord said, I will bring them to my holy mountain and I will make them joyful in my house of prayer. Go ahead and read.
Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be acceptable upon mine altar. For mine house shall be called an house of prayer for all people.
See what the Lord said, my burnt offering, my sacrifices will be, their burnt offering sacrifices will be accepted upon his altar. For his house will be called a house of prayer for all people. Go ahead and read.
The Lord God which gathereth the outcasts of Israel said.
Now the Lord said earlier about gathering the outcasts of Israel. Also he said, what else did he say? Go ahead and read.
Yet will I gather others to him besides those that are gathered unto him.
And yet will I gather others to him besides those that are gathered. Who are the others? They are the strangers. This is all about the gathering of the people of God. Because if they will serve the Lord and be his servants and take hold of his covenant, guess what? They too become the people of God as well. That's how it is, people. I know some that don't sit well with some. Because you have some want to make this only be about Israel. It ain't about Israel. It is about the people of God.
Yes, sir.
Those that will serve him and be his servant and take hold of his covenant and keep the Sabbath day from polluting it, that's who this is about. The Lord will gather them. As he said, I will gather the outcasts of Israel. I will also gather others beside those. Let's go over to Zechariah chapter 2. And we'll begin reading at verse 7. We're almost there. After this one, we have 4 more scriptures, and we'll be done. You will have your spiritual portion of this feast of the Tabernacles. Then we're going to give you a natural portion. Start reading at Zechariah 2 and begin reading at verse 7. Go ahead and read.
Deliver thyself, O Zion, that dwellest with the daughter of Babylon.
Now he said, deliver thyself, because Israel has been scattered. Lord said, deliver yourself, O Zion, that dwell with the daughter of Babylon. Go ahead and read on.
For thus saith the Lord of hosts, after the glory hath he sent me unto the nations which spoiled you.
Now he says, thus saith the Lord of hosts, after the glory have he sent me. This is Jesus talking. Unto the nations that spoils you. In other words, that rob you. Because the Lord said when Israel gets scattered, that they would be spoiled and robbed. Yes, and he said that? Yes, Deuteronomy chapter 28. So now, after the nations that spoil you, go ahead and read on.
He that toucheth you, toucheth the apple of his eye.
And then you want to throw away Israel. Lord said, he that touches Israel, toucheth the apple of his eye. Go ahead, keep reading.
For behold, I will shake mine hand upon them, and they shall be a spoil to their servants, and ye shall know that the Lord of hosts has sent me.
Go ahead. Now, the Lord is talking about the Lord of hosts have sent me.
Sir.
Well, who is this Lord that is saying that the Lord of hosts have sent him? Look like to me you got 2 here.
That's right.
You know who you have here? You have the one that became known as the Father, sending the one that became known as the Son. The Lord of hosts has sent me. Read on.
Sing and rejoice, O daughter of Zion, for lo, I come, and I will dwell in the midst of thee, saith the Lord.
Look at what the Lord said, I come, and I am going to dwell in the midst of you, said the Lord. Read.
And many nations shall be joined to the Lord in that day, and shall be my people.
Wait a minute. Many nations, the Lord said?
Yes, sir.
Oh, not just the Israelites.
Yes, sir.
Well, how are they going to be his people? Because they're going to take hold of his covenant to serve him and to love the name of the Lord and to be his servants. Then they too will be his people. Go ahead and read on.
Middle of 11.
Read it.
And I will dwell in the midst of thee, and thou shalt know that the Lord of hosts has sent me unto thee.
And he said, I'm going to dwell in the midst of thee, and you will know that the Lord of hosts have sent me unto you. Go ahead, read that next verse.
And the Lord shall inherit Judah his portion in the Holy Land,
Go ahead.
and shall choose Jerusalem again.
He shall inherit Judah his portion in the Holy Land, and shall choose Jerusalem again. So they too will be his people, because it is all about the gathering of the people of God. That is what this feast, people, is really all about. Let's go to Zechariah 8, and we'll begin reading at verse 1. 8 and 1. Okay. Go ahead and read it, brother.
Again, the word of the Lord of hosts came to me, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts,
Go ahead.
I was jealous for Zion with great jealousy, and I was jealous for her with great fury.
Now he said, I was jealous for her with great jealousy, and I was jealous for her with great fury. Go ahead.
Thus saith the Lord, I am returned unto Zion, and will dwell in the midst of Jerusalem.
Oh, you mean the Lord ain't coming to get you to take you to heaven?
No, sir.
No. Lord said, I'm going to dwell in Zion, even in the midst of Jerusalem. So much for that going to heaven stuff. You got a Bible full of the Lord returning to this earth and dwelling in Jerusalem. I don't care if you believe in the Old Testament or the New Testament, the Lord is going to return and dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. Yes, that is where he will be. Go ahead and read on.
And Jerusalem shall be called a city of truth.
And then Jerusalem will be called a city of truth. Because it ain't the city of truth now. Sir. Some of everything goes on in Jerusalem. Some of everything goes on there, and some of everything is taught there. In fact, pretty much everything but the truth is taught there. But then, when the Lord returned to dwell there, it will be called a city of truth. Go ahead and read on.
And the mountain of the Lord of hosts, the holy mountain.
And it will be called the mountain of the Lord of hosts, even his holy mountain. Skip down to verse 20. Go ahead and read.
Thus saith the Lord of hosts, it shall yet come to pass that there shall come people and the inhabitants of many cities, and the inhabitants of one city shall go to another, saying, Let us go up speedily to pray before the Lord and to seek the Lord of hosts. I will go also.
Now he said they're going to come many, and they're going to say, Come, let us go up before the Lord and seek the Lord. I will go also. Why are you going up to Jerusalem to seek the Lord? Because he just told you that is where he's going to be.
Sir.
And everybody going to come up.
That's
have
right.
to come up. And guess what? One of the things the Bible said they're going to have to do when they come up is keep this Feast of Tabernacles.
Yes, sir.
That is written. And by the way, go ahead, keep reading. What verse are we?
Verse 22.
Read.
Yea, many people and strong nations shall come to seek the Lord of hosts in Jerusalem.
Now he said, many people and strong nations shall come to seek the Lord of hosts in Jerusalem. Go ahead and read on.
And to pray before the Lord.
And to pray, it said, before the Lord. When is this going to happen? Let's go over to, I know what I said. Don't remind me. I know I said 3 more. I changed my mind.
Yes, sir.
Let's go to show you what time this is going to be. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 2. And we'll begin reading at verse 1. Isaiah chapter 2 and verse 1. 2 and 1. Go ahead and read.
The word that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem.
Go ahead and read.
And it shall come to pass in the last days.
Notice what time this will come to pass. You didn't even know last days was written in the Old Testament. You know, the Old Testament been fulfilled already, and now we are dealing with the New Testament. It shall come to pass in the last days, even in the days that we are living in.
Yes,
these are, people, the last days, whether you believe it or not. Go ahead and read on.
That the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountain.
They said that the mountain of the Lord of hosts will be established in the top of the mountain. What is this mountain of the Lord of hosts? It is the government of God,
yes,
and will be established in all nations. Go ahead and read on.
And shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it.
And notice what it said, and all people, nations shall flow unto it. Go ahead and read on.
And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob.
Now many people shall go and say, Come ye, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. Go ahead, keep reading.
And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths.
So now he's going to teach us of his ways, and as it is said here, we will walk in his paths. Go ahead and read on.
For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem.
Look here, the whole earth will be ruled from Jerusalem.
Yes,
out of Zion, which is another name for Jerusalem, shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Go ahead, keep reading.
And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks.
Go ahead and read.
Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore.
That is how it will be when the Lord returns to gather his people and set up his kingdom on this earth. Let's go to Acts chapter 1. And we will begin reading at verse 9, Acts 1, and we'll pick it up at verse 9. Because Jesus was about to ascend back to the Father. And they had asked him, will you at this time restore the kingdom unto Israel? And he said, it is not for you to know the time and the seasons which the Lord will put in his hand. He didn't say I ain't going to restore it unto them. It is not for you to know the times and the seasons that I will do it. There's something else I want you to do. And he told them, you go and preach the gospel, starting at Jerusalem. But now, he also said unto them, as they watched him ascend into the heaven, the angel said unto his disciples, this is what the angel said to them. Go ahead and read verse 9.
And when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight.
Go ahead and read.
And while they looked steadfastly towards heaven as he went up, behold, two men stood by them in white apparel, which also said, Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus, which is taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven.
Now he said, the same Jesus that was taken up from you in heaven, you will see him return in like manner. Now it will tell you where he left from. Go ahead and read.
Then returned they unto Jerusalem from the mount called Olivet, which is from Jerusalem a Sabbath day's journey.
So now he left from the Mount of Olives, and the angels said unto his disciples, that same Jesus that you saw going to heaven, you will see return in like manner as you saw him go into heaven. Let's look at his return. Zechariah 14, and began reading at verse 1. 14, and pick it up at verse 1. This is his return. 14 and 1. Okay, brother, go ahead and read.
Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee.
Go ahead.
For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city.
So now he said, I'm going to gather all nations against Jerusalem about. And then he said the house is going to be rifled, and the women ravished, and all of that. Go ahead, keep reading.
Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations as when he fought in the day of battle.
Well, who is this that's going to come and fight against a nation, even whose feet will stand up on the Mount of Olives? Keep reading.
And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst of, therefore, toward the east and toward the west. And there shall be a very great valley.
Go ahead.
And half of the mountain shall remove toward the north, and half of it toward the south.
So now the Lord is going to come, and he will even come to the Mount of Olives. Who is this Lord that's going to come, that's going to stand on the Mount of Olives? Well, the angels told you who it was. That same Jesus you saw go into heaven, he will return in like manner. Left on the Mount of Olives, coming back to the Mount of Olives.
Sir.
Keep reading.
And ye shall flee to the valley of the mountains, for the valley of the mountains shall reach unto Azel.
Go ahead.
Yea, ye shall flee, like as ye fled from before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. And the Lord my God shall come, and all the saints with thee.
Now the Lord going to come, and all the saints with him. Because the saints going to rise up out of the ground, those that are in the grave, of those that are still alive on the earth. They will rise up as well, and they will meet the Lord in the clouds and in the air, and so will they ever be with the Lord. Skip down to verse 9. Go ahead and read.
And the Lord shall be king over all the earth. In that day there shall be one Lord, and his name one.
Not the Lord going to take you to heaven, but the Lord will be king over all of the earth in that day.
Sir.
And there will be one Lord, and his name one. Show you what else going to happen when the Lord returns. Because he said earlier, all nations going to have to go up to Jerusalem to meet the Lord of hosts. Skip down to verse 16. Go ahead, read.
And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles.
All nations, he said, that came up against them, they're going to have to go up to Jerusalem once a year to keep this very feast that we are keeping.
Yes, sir.
This Feast of the Tabernacle. Because this thing was to be done in every generation, people. They did it in the Old Testament. You know they did it. Guess what? They did it in the New Testament as well. If you would read John chapter 8, you will find out that even Jesus kept this Feast of the Tabernacles, people. And you supposed to be a follower of Christ. And you say, we don't need to keep it. Why you don't need to keep it? The Lord said, in all your dwellings, in all generations. Well, that is exactly what he meant. So now he said they all going to have to come up to keep this Feast of the Tabernacles. Go ahead, read on.
Verse 17.
Read it.
And it shall be that whoso will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain.
Go ahead.
And if the family of Egypt go not up and come not and have no rain, there shall be the plague wherewith the Lord will smite the heathen that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles.
Now he said they don't come up. Then the Lord said, I ain't going to give them no rain. Guess what? If you don't get no rain, you ain't got no harvest.
That's right.
The Lord have to send rain in due season for you to have a harvest. Otherwise, you don't have no harvest. And he said, of whatever nation do not come up to keep this feast, the Lord will not give him any rain. Let's go over to Deuteronomy chapter 14, and we'll begin reading at verse 23. Yeah, I'm almost done, you all. Don't worry. You're going to eat. Because we're going to start this feasting. Actually, we're feasting already.
Yes, sir.
Because this bread you get now, if you eat this bread, you'll live forever.
Yes, sir.
But that bread back there in the kitchen, you may eat it and die anyway.
That's right.
But we're going to give you some, though. Don't fret. We're going to give it to you in just a minute. And then we're going to feast on into the night. Because we're going to do the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread and the second day as well. Because when the sun goes down, that will end the first day. And it will begin the second day. But now, Deuteronomy 14, and began reading at verse 23. Go ahead and read.
And thou shalt eat before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose to place his name there.
Now he said, you shall go before the Lord your God in the place that he shall choose to put his name there. Go ahead and read.
The tithes of thy corn, of thy wine, and of thine oil.
See what it said? The tithes of thy corn and of thy wine and of thy... That's what you did on this feast. You had to bring up tithes of your wine and of your corn and of your oil. Well, when did you do this? At the time of the harvest, people. And you had three times you had to go up before the Lord each year, and you had 3 harvests. Because you had to come up, and you couldn't come up empty, so you needed something.
Yes, sir.
You did it at the time of the harvest, because that's what these feasts is pointing to. Go ahead, what verse?
End of 23.
Go ahead.
And the firstlings of thy herds and of thy flocks, that thou mayest learn to fear the Lord thy God always.
Now he say you do this, that you may learn to fear the Lord God always. Go ahead.
And if the way be too long for thee, so that thou art not able to carry it, or if the place be too far from thee, which the Lord thy God shall choose to set his name there.
Now he said the place, because you had to go up to the place that the Lord had chosen to put his name in. But it may have been a long way off. So therefore, and you had to bring something. So maybe you wanted to bring an ox. Well, man, if the place was a long way, that was a long way to take an ox. So this is what you could do. Go ahead and read.
When the Lord thy God hath blessed thee.
When the Lord your God had blessed you. Go ahead and read on.
Then shalt thou turn it into money, and bind up the money in thine hand.
Then what you could do, you could sell it and turn it into money and bind the money in your hand, and then go on to the place that the Lord hath chosen. Go ahead and read on.
And shall go unto the place which the Lord thy God shall choose.
Go ahead.
And thou shalt bestow that money for whatsoever thy soul lusteth after.
And then you could bestow that money for whatsoever your soul lusted after. Go ahead and read.
For oxen, or for sheep.
Well, maybe you wanted some ox, or maybe you wanted some sheep. You could restore it for that. Or maybe you wanted some wine or strong drink. Guess what? You could bestow it for that. Go ahead and read on.
Or for wine, or for strong drink.
You know, I have to read this. I am always compelled to read it because we get visitors. And then they say, you know, see us sitting up here preaching the word. Then they see us pull up a bottle of wine. And then because they was brought up in a church that taught that drinking is sin, then they ready to accuse us of being sinners. Sin, people, is the transgression of the law.
Yes, sir.
Drinking is not transgressing any law.
That's right.
The Lord teach against overindulging, but not against drinking. So now, you could bestow that money for whatever your soul lusteth after, whether it be wine or strong drink. Go ahead, keep reading.
Or for whatsoever thy soul desireth.
Go ahead.
And thou shalt eat there before the Lord thy God, and thou shalt rejoice, thou and thine household.
He said, and you shall rejoice. You and your, and that's what we're going to do. Because we are doing what the Lord said do.
Yes, sir.
Lord said have a convocation on this day. And then he said, don't come before him empty. You don't bring something. And really, for the most part, when Israel was in the land, it had something to do with the harvest.
Yes, sir.
And then he said, you could rejoice before the Lord, you and your household, and that is exactly what we are going to do. What verse are we?
End at 26.
Go ahead and read.
And the Levite that is within thy gates, thou shalt not forsake him, for he hath no part, no inheritance with thee.
So now, let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 16. And this will be last. Deuteronomy 16. And we'll begin reading at verse 13. 16 and 13. Go ahead and read.
Thou shalt observe the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days.
Now he said you keep this feast for 7 days, meaning you're supposed to feast for 7 days. You know, we read earlier about an 8th day, didn't we?
Yes, sir.
But the Lord said feast 7 days. That's what we're going to do. But then there's an 8th day, and you don't feast on that day. The Lord said that you ought to have a solemn assembly on that day. But these 7 days, they are about rejoicing before the Lord. But a solemn assembly, that's quite different. Go ahead and read.
After that thou hast gathered in thy corn and thy wine.
Look what he said. After you have gathered in your corn and your wine, people. That's what these 3 times a year that the Lord talked about here. After you had gathered in your corn and your wine, you had a feast and you rejoiced before the Lord God. Go ahead and read on.
And thou shalt rejoice in thy feast, thou and thy son and thy daughter and thy manservant and thy maidservant and the Levite, the stranger and the fatherless and the widow that are within thy gates.
And then that meant everybody, you know, not just you, the male, but the woman and the children, and even if there was a stranger within your gates, they had to do it as well. Go ahead, keep reading.
7 days shalt thou keep a solemn feast unto the Lord thy God in the place which the Lord shall choose.
Go ahead.
Because the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all thine increase.
See, well, look, because the Lord thy God will bless thee in all of thine increase. What verse are we?
End of 15.
Go ahead.
And in all the works of thine hands, therefore thou shalt surely rejoice.
Go ahead.
3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose.
3 times a year, the Lord said, all the males come before him in the place that he shall choose. Go ahead and read.
In the feast of unleavened bread.
In the feast of unleavened bread. That was the time of a harvest, the first harvest. Go ahead and read on.
And in the feast of weeks.
And that was the second harvest, and that is also known as Pentecost. Go ahead and read on.
And in the feast of tabernacles.
And in the feast of tabernacles, which is also called the feast of ingathering. Go ahead, keep reading.
And they shall not appear before the Lord empty.
And you shall not appear before the Lord empty. Because you should have had something. Because if you had served the Lord, then the Lord had blessed you, and you were not to come up before the Lord empty. 3 times a year, the Lord said you had to do this. And this particular feast, it was all about the gathering of the people of God. Thank you, and I'm going to say to you, enjoy the feast.